Happy holidays, dear travelers! It feels like just last month we were celebrating the new year of 2025, and here we are again celebrating another Christmas together, and then the little slow crawl all the way to 2026.
Yes.
Oh god, that sounds awful to say.
Gosh, 2026. Where did the year go? It feels like
no idea.
We should be in the spring still, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a wild year, another wild year in the Enchanted Forest. And I cannot wait for Christmas.
Me too. I mean, I feel like that week where it's Christmas, right before Christmas, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The lead up to Christmas is fantastic when you're picking out your tree, and we always do like a live tree here because it's just simpler. But then the whole house smells like pine, and of course my floors are covered in pine needles, but that's another story. But I just feel like the entire vibe is so nice with the lights and the snow. I don't like the end of the year because it reminds us that it's another year gone, but I do like everything about Christmas.
I cannot wait. I love Christmas. I love this time of year. Bring it on.
And if you were thinking, dear travelers, how could they possibly have another Christmas story? Well, we do.
Mm-hmm. A few years ago, we covered Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, also known as a ghost story for Christmas. If you haven't listened to that, just to give you some context, the Victorians loved their ghost stories. They loved horror and gothic and ghosts so much it became a Christmas tradition to tell ghost stories with one another. Following this tradition, we retold Dickens' story, and this year, after many episodes on the Snow Child, Santa Claus, and other tales relating to Christmas itself, we are returning to our ghostly phase with another Christmas ghost story.
And actually, I found this story when I was researching ghost stories for Halloween and for October. But I was just like, I can't justify wasting away a good Christmas-themed story for October, especially when there seem to be so few of them when you actually go looking for them. So I was like, we need to save this story for Christmas time. And this story is called The Deacon of Myrká. It's an Icelandic folk ghost story. And we found an English translation in Icelandic Legends collected by Jón Árnason. So this tale type follows the ATU type 265, also known as the dead bridegroom claims his bride. Basically, it's the opposite of the Orpheus type we talked about in our Catabasis episode, where the bridegroom claims his dead bride. So a bit of a change there. For background on Icelandic folklore regarding this tale type specifically, we also looked at Chapter 1 of Icelandic Folklore and the Cultural Memory of Religious Change by Eric Shane Bryan. Bryan outlines other pre-medieval tales that feature the death of a prominent hero and his lover, as well as other death rituals that require the death of a female slave to enter the grave of a high-ranking man. His book also talks a lot about Christianization of a lot of pagan legends and how religious context shaped the story's transition over time. I will link those on the website because I think they are a worthwhile read and they are open access, and they do help you understand a little bit more about where the story came from.
Not to beat a dead horse or anything, but it's Christmas Eve, so let's get started with our spooky holiday tale.
A long time ago, a deacon lived in Myrká, also known as the Dark Water. He had a beautiful horse with a gray mane that he called Faxi, and he was often seen riding his horse around. As it came to be, he fell in love with a girl called Gudrun, who lived on the opposite side of the valley on her farm. Their houses were separated by the Dark River. A week before Christmas, the deacon rode over the icy river to Gudrun's house and invited her to the Christmas festivities and dinner in Myrká. She agreed, and he arranged to pick her up on Christmas Eve, and then they shared a lovely few hours together. It had been snowing fiercely the few days before, and the frost was heavy in some parts. But on the day that he was visiting his beloved, the sun was shining bright, and there came so rapid a thaw that in the few short hours the deacon was at Gudrun's farm, the ice on the river began to grow weak. The ice spiderwebbed and cracked, flooding and melting until huge masses of drift ice were whirled down the stream. As the deacon left Gudrun's farm, he was so caught up in his thoughts that he did not notice the river until he came up right to the bank. He spurred Faxi along until at last they came across a narrow ice bridge. Taking his chances, He rode onto it, and seeing that it held, the deacon carried on over the bridge.
Nothing can go wrong with this.
Oh no, look at this very compromised ice. I'm just gonna take my chances.
I've played enough video games to know that once you cross it, that's going to break and you're going to get stuck in an area that's super hard until you complete a quest.
Unfortunately for him, this was not a video game. Tragedy struck right at the midway point. The ice was at its weakest in the center, and it gave way under the weight of the horse and the man. Faxi struggled against the sudden rapids and was carried downstream until he was able to push through to the other side. However, his rider was nowhere to be seen. The deacon had drowned in the ensuing struggle. The next day, a neighboring farmer happened across Faxi, grazing at the bits of dried grass that were not sodden with molten snow. The farmer at once recognized the horse, and realizing the deacon was not there, even though he had personally seen the man ride across the river the day before, the farmer put together what happened.
Actually, I was just thinking about it. In a way, it's surprising he died, because in so many things in media now, I feel like falling off a cliff is like kind of code for they're gonna survive and they're gonna come back later, like fine, because most fictional characters can survive falling off a cliff. So hearing he's just straight up dead is like, oh, actually that's kind of jarring.
Yeah, I mean, I will say we just watched this K-drama called Confidence Queen, and spoiler alert, but one of the bad guys in the end, he drives off a cliff. He drives off the road, off a bridge, and he falls into the water. And then right at the very end of like the season, they hear on the news that they recovered the car, but the driver wasn't in it. And I was like, oh, they're hyping up for a second season. And then right at the end, she's like, the main character, she was like, Confidence Queen will be back. And I'm like, of course he'll be back, because the main bad guy, obviously his body not being found, is an indicator that there's going to be a season 2, or at least opening the door for a season 2, like leaving it like ajar. But yeah, I feel like nowadays, no one actually dies from these kind of things.
I do think it's also really fun when stories are aware of the trope and they're like, we didn't find a body, so they're totally alive. And then when they get confirmation they're actually dead is also really satisfying to go through the, no, we don't believe it. And then to be like, no, they actually did die. This is actually a very lethal thing.
He's gone. That's not how it works in real life.
Yeah. But anyway, so our deacon, he's dead. So yes. Let's continue.
The farmer ran down the bank until at last he came across the deacon's body. After drowning, the weightless corpse had drifted downstream until it got caught in shallow rocks and roots. All the flesh had been torn off the man's head, and the white of his skull shone brightly in the afternoon sun. Distraught, the farmer carried the body back to Myrká, where it was buried in the graveyard. The river was so swollen and angry that no news could be exchanged between the dwellers of the opposite banks, and so, ignorant of her beloved's death, Gudrun eagerly awaited Christmas Eve. Finally the day came, and the frost and snow blasted down all morning. Evening approached, and Gudrun began dressing in her best, but before she could finish, there was a knock on the door. One of the maids quickly went to open the door. When she did, there was no one there. Thinking that she simply could not see the knocker, the maid cried into the night that she would go and get a light. No sooner had she shut the door and scuttled off to grab a light when she heard another loud knock. From her room, Gudrun yelled down that it was for her, and that she'd be down right then. She was in such a hurry that she shoved one arm into her coat and threw the rest over her shoulder. When she finally opened the door, she saw Faxi, and next to him stood the deacon. Without a word, he helped her mount the horse and then climbed on himself. Thinking he was in a hurry to get to the festivities, Gudrun just held on. When they came to the river, it had mostly frozen over during the day, except for the current that ran down the middle. She didn't have time to say anything before the deacon spurred the horse over the ice and straight towards the middle. Right before they fell away into the endless depths, the horse leapt forward and over the rushing water. At the same time, the head of the deacon nodded forward for just a moment, and from behind him, Gudrun saw a large patch of bare skull gleam white in his hair. She couldn't breathe. She was too frightened to even let out a gasp or loosen her grasp on the deacon. And then the moon broke free of the clouds, and still looking forwards, the deacon said, "The moon glides, death rides. Seest thou not the white place in the back of my head? Garoon, garoon." She did not reply, and the deacon said no more until they reached Myrká, where they dismounted. She looked around wildly, but they were alone in the church. Here it was chilly and cold, and she was completely alone with nothing but ghosts and corpses to witness what happened next. He looked at her once more and said, "Wait for me, garoon, garoon, while I am taking faxi, outside the hedges, the hedges." She stood frozen in place until he was out of view, and then she saw that near her there was an open grave, as if it was waiting for her. Sick with horror, Gudrun ran to the church porch and seized the first thing she found, the ropes for the bells. She grabbed them and told them with all her strength. The sound must have alerted the deacon, because no sooner had the first clear ring broken the night silence than she felt someone grasp her and pull so fiercely at her cloak that it tore off, leaving only the one sleeve that she had managed to put on. Spinning round, she saw the deacon jump headlong into the grave with a tattered cloak in his hand. As soon as he vanished below, the heaps of earth on either side fell over him and closed the grave up to the brink. Sensing the deacon's ominous presence still lingering, Gudrun grasped the ropes once more and, sobbing, kept tolling the bells until every farmer and every farm servant in Myrká rose and came to the churchyard. That same night, after she was sheltered and safe in one of the farms, the deacon rose again. He found her in her bed and tried to drag her away, but the noise of the struggle woke everyone up again, and from then on, no one could sleep for fear of the deacon.
I mean, I would be terrified.
Yeah, me too.
My goodness.
And this repeated every night for a fortnight. No matter where she hid, the deacon's ghost would find her and try and drag her into the grave. She could not be left alone for one moment for fear of the goblin deacon. From time to time, a neighboring priest came and sat on the edge of her bed, reading the Psalms of David to protect her from this ghostly persecution, but nothing worked. Still, the deacon came. Finally, they sent for a man from the north country who was known to be skilled in witchcraft. The man dug up a large stone and placed it in the middle of the guest room at Myrká. When the deacon rose that night to torment his former sweetheart, the man seized the deacon and uttered a spell over him, then forced him beneath the stone and exorcised the passionate demon that had possessed the deacon's body. From that day on, the deacon was finally at peace, and Gudrun was no longer haunted by the man with the gleaming skull.
Ooh.
And that is the story of the Deacon of the Dark Water.
There's a lot of good elements to ghost stories that make them spooky. And there is something about just like coming to a random place that you're stranded to for the night or something, and that's why the ghosts haunt you, because you just chose a random spot. There's something so terrifying that it is specifically hunting you down. Like, you cannot escape it. It's coming for you. And it's not interested in anybody else.
I mean, and the fact that it happened over and over and over again must have been terrifying. And she couldn't even cross the river because it was still, it was like melting again. So it feels like she's trapped in this almost nightmare of every single night.
Yeah.
And I like that eventually they tried the priest. They tried like the holy way. And like, you know what? Let's go get a witch. Let's go get someone with witchcraft.
Yeah, different ways to go about it.
Yes. And after I found this story, interesting enough, I did find another story that was very similar called Golden Hair. It's very similar. There's a golden-haired girl that's waiting for her poor lover to come back. And she ends up riding with this dead count who obviously is in love with her, well, air quotes, in love with her hair. And he wants to take her to hell with him. In the end, he only manages to take the hair because she ends up cutting it off while he's dragging her. But it was interesting that in a short span of time, I found two stories that had the same kind of idea of this dead bridegroom coming back, dragging this poor girl into hell with him. And there was something else. So in the poem that in the lines that he says, he calls her Garoon, not Gudrun or anything that has the word God in it. And that's assumed because he's a demon, he's a goblin, he cannot say the word God. So he says a different form of her name.
Oh, that's actually funny. It's like the technicalities.
Well, yeah, because I was reading it, I'm like, why does he call her Garun? Is that maybe like a pet name, or maybe like in the different translations of the text, at some point, her original name and then this like other version of her name got mixed up, and people just left it in, thinking as I did that it was a pet name. But no, it was just that because he's not alive, he's dead. He cannot say the name of God. So, I mean, it is interesting that he could go onto a churchyard, because usually if you can't say the name of God in different folklore traditions, you also then can't go into like a holy place, including churchyard. So
remind me, was the deacon of that town or a traveling deacon?
No, he is of Myrká. So he lives in Myrká and she lives across the river, and so he is the deacon of that place.
For like this world building, I would assume it's because that priest is not there to maintain like the holy nature of it. Maybe is like why that's not there, because they only have traveling priests come, right? That would be my like guess, but yeah, someone needs to cast a hallow spell there. get that protected. But yeah, dying in like the ice and the cold water is just like such a terrifying thought to me. It's like, oof.
Yeah, I mean, I was so sure that he was going to just let them fall into the river and drown them both.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's like, no, I'm going to drag you into my grave. I'm like, all right, that's a little bit much. You could have done this much simpler if you had just like, let her drown as well.
Yeah, well, maybe there was some part of him that knew that like this would buy her time to do something. You never know.
Yes.
Or he just knew that this was way creepier.
The storyteller's like, no, we can make this more interesting.
Ugh, do you ever read stories like that where you can tell the author's like, we can elongate this person's suffering? And it's like, but we don't need to.
Yeah, a lot of stories. There, like any story that was supposed to be a trilogy and then they've made it longer. So far, I haven't read one that I liked, that I was like, yes, oh my God, this should have been longer. You're right. This is perfect. And I have this opinion about Rebecca Yarros's Fourth Wing trilogy as well. Well, not trilogy, I know there's supposed to be 5 books. But some of the books, when they're 5 books or 6 books, no matter how well thought out they are, you're always going to get points where it starts to feel very repetitive. And especially with big books. If you're writing a big book, yeah. I'm expecting it to, like, there needs to be enough in that big book for me to be like, yes, this was worth the read. But so many times I'll read a giant book and I'll be like, this could be an email. Like, and it's not about like reading comprehension. It's not about world building. I love world building. I love all of like the different intricate relationships you have and building on that and having lore and having stories behind stories. Obviously, I mean, we have a podcast on it. But there is a point, and this is something we talked about in university as well, was when we're analyzing scenes, we need scenes to either forward the plot, have a confrontation, or to reveal something about the characters. If we're adding like scenes just for no reason, just to be like, oh, I thought this would be fun to write, it's like, okay, but yeah, am I learning something about these people? Am I learning something about the world? Am I, what is happening in the scene that makes it relevant? And unfortunately, I think with things like book talk and stuff like that, when we're focusing more on tropes and advancing ideas of what story should have, like, oh my God, there should be like an inn that only has 1 bed. I'm like, okay, but if that scene doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. I feel like the focus on tropes as opposed to, do I need this scene? Does it advance something about the reader's understanding of the world, of the characters? I feel like maybe we need to be more selective with what scenes we keep and what we don't keep. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Tolkien wrote 1 book called Lord of the Rings and was like, this is 1 book. And everyone's like, we actually need to make this 3 books. And he was so against it. So there's
his was different. And most of his scenes, there is something that advances the plot. There are, Tom Bombadil, okay, but besides him, even him, but he had this entire world. Like, everything was lore and everything. And he created, to be fair, Tolkien created lore for his lore. Like, he's like, we're gonna go deeper.
He made up a language and then had to make a whole system to support why like that language is there.
You know what? I love it. I love that. I'm like, give me an entire language.
my point being, like, he was, like, really good at his craft, and he knew, he's like, I just have a book, and he didn't want to expand it, like, beyond, like, he knew the scope. He knew the brief. And it's like, today, people are like, but I just want to keep writing more. And it's like, no, know your end point. Know what you're going for, and then complete it.
Yeah, or I'm like, you know, if you have to, like, make it relevant so that when I'm reading it, I'm like, okay, perfect. I understand why this is relevant.
Not a book thing, but the one thing that I think of when I hear that is, like, the Dragon Prince is, I'm not sure if you watched that show.
The animated show. Yeah, that went on for too long.
So, admittedly, I think I'd seen, like, the first 2 seasons, and then I was like, I was kind of in the vibe of, this could be good, but I'm gonna, like, wait until it's done and people can, like, go online and see if people are, like, recommending for me to finish it or anything. And the feeling I get is that they kept saying, oh, we just need one more season to wrap everything up or to, like, conclude this thing. But they kept getting approval from Netflix for, like, more seasons, and they still haven't wrapped up a bunch of things. And they're like, no, we need another season. Now there's a Kickstarter for it, for, like, another season stuff. It's like, no, you keep saying you're almost done, but you clearly are not. Like, don't, like, what are you doing? Anyways, that's the most recent example I can think of for
I completely
people
agree.
Not knowing how to wrap something up.
Yeah, and, like, and I think this is my problem with Marvel now as well, is that there's just so much. And I'm just like, I was so into pretty much, like, that entire, okay, so we watched it together. We watched all of the movies in the lead up to the Avengers movies, and then we watched the Avengers movies, and we watched Endgame together, and then me and my husband watched a lot of the TV shows, because we were like, okay, we want to stay relevant, we want to make sure we know what's happening, and then they just kept coming out, and there was more, and I was like, okay, this is becoming a lot, and so I haven't even seen the new, like, the Thunderbolts, the new Avengers thing, because I'm just kind of over it, to be honest. I feel like it stretched itself too thin for me.
I think there was, like, they were building towards Kang being a big threat, but then I think something happened with the actor and they don't want to do that now. I fell off at Thor 4. That was, like, the last straw for me.
Yeah.
I couldn't with that movie.
It didn't know. I feel like none of the movies knew if they were trying to be serious or if they were trying to be funny or if they were trying, like, I feel like we lost the plot a little bit. I loved WandaVision, though. I will have no hate towards
WandaVision.
Loved WandaVision.
To me, it was the perfect, like, epilogue. Like, we had Endgame, but then we got a little something afterwards to know what some of the characters were doing. And we're really, really off topic now.
Yeah, I mean, basically we hate when things keep going on and on and on and on and become a cash cow type of thing where they keep going because they make the author money.
Yeah. So, not to keep this episode from going on and on and on, I think it's time we wrap this up. Dear travelers, I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday season.
If you want to see the show notes, which include all our sources, please check out our website, talesfromenchantedforest.com, or you can find us on most social media sites as @FromEnchanted or under the podcast name, including on Bluesky, TikTok, and Instagram. However, if you are old school like Sparrow, then you can always send us an email at talesfromenchantedforest@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what you are enjoying in between Halloween and Christmas.
And remember, there's always a place for you in the Enchanted Forest.